Let's see if we are live. Turn chat. All right, this works. Okay, so today we got a new deal. So we're gonna work on Instagram. That's perfectly fine. As long as it works on YouTube, that works for me. So today we got a deal in Birmingham, Alabama, 35228. Just working through the different zip codes. And I was just looking at, okay, there's a 3-bedroom property that's like relatively good condition. So it's 3-bedroom, slightly bigger than the one that we're looking at, but this is listed at 155 and this one's listed at 179. So I'm following these properties because I want to see what the ARVs looks like and whether or not in the zip code there's a big premium for 4 bedrooms compared to 3 bedrooms, because that might lead to future BRRRR opportunities in the zip code, all right? So today we'll just underwrite this one because I want to get more and more familiar with the rents in the zip code of 35228. This is 5845 Court Q, Birmingham, Alabama, 35228. As you can kind of see, this pretty much renovated and looks really nice from the outside, inside. Kitchen looks great. It's somewhere that I would be proud to live in, to be quite honest with you. So I like the condition of the home just based on the cosmetic items that I see. Anything about new roofs or anything like that? Basement is complete with a den separate entrance. All right, looks pretty good for the most part. We don't need to do much. So this property, and I believe it should be in Jefferson County. Yes, correct. All right. So I want to get my rents first. So when you come here and you Google HUD FMR, you're going to get the rent ceilings by bedroom count by zip code. Now, when you get up to 2025 and 2024 smarter zip codes, click on the state, click on the county, you're going to come up to the maximum rents, usually that includes utilities, by zip code by bedroom count. And you're going to see that the maximum rent here is $1,620 for a 4 bedroom. So let me write that down. $1,620. It's pretty high, actually, for a 4-bed and 35228, and $1,450 on 3 bedroom. 35228 and 35228. Just writing down all these numbers because my partners already understand how I analyze deals for the most part. So this is going to be a good practice on a conventional purchase perspective. So now I got my rent ceiling. The next thing I want to do is I want to get my market rent. Now I'm going to go to affordablehousing.com, go to the owner section, go to the market rent estimator, plug in the bedroom count. And the number you care most about here is this number right here on the 1276 number. For 25 units within a 1.99 mile radius, you're going to see that the average rent is $1,276, which is much lower than 1620, right? So good news is that there is room to go up. Bad news is that you probably can't rent a property for 1620 when the average rent for a 4 bedroom is 1276. Okay, so I'll probably underwrite with 1276. I can put $1,300, right? Because that's probably gonna round up, and because we have a great finish on the property, looks probably top of the line, top of rehab. And the reason we have to use that item is because of the rent reasonableness test. If you go to the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook and you go to section 2.2, there is a test called the rent reasonableness test, which essentially says that the PHA, or the Public Housing Authority, must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units, which means you can't charge more rent versus what the market is charging at $1,276. You can't go ahead and charge $1,620 simply because they are a Section 8 voucher holder, right? That's a big no-no. Now, are there exceptions in certain cities and areas? Sure, absolutely, especially in areas where they know that the cost of living is very high in a city like New York or Boston. But those are the exceptions, certainly not the rule. All right, so today we're going to use 1,300 because that is the lower of the two when you compare 1,300 versus 1,620. So let me just finish writing down the rest of it. 1,276, 1,220. I just want to write down all these rents. 1,307 and 1,918. Whoops, those rents for a 4-bed. So I'm going to paste that down here. Oops, one more down. And I'm just going to double check. It's 1.99 mile radius, so I want to make that in there. Now, I just want to double check what the rents are for a 3-bedroom there, because I'm just gauging, right? I'm learning the area, I'm learning the market right now, and that's what's going on. So 1078 for a 3-bedroom. So you're getting about roughly in the market a $200 premium for a 4-bedroom compared to a 2-bedroom in the zip code. At least within this is within 0.64 mile radius. So that's probably really small, much smaller radius than 2-mile radius that we're selling. But this shows that there's probably not as many 4-bedrooms. So it could signal that there is bigger demand in that area specifically for 4-bedroom homes. 0.64. All right, 0.64. All right, now that I have all these numbers in here, I'm gonna go ahead and plug in my purchase price. The purchase price of this property is $179,000, so I'll plug that right in here. 179. This property looks relatively turnkey, so I'm gonna leave my rehab at roughly $2,400. You can always just check out the rehab calculator tab if you want to just go item by item. But usually, right now for $2,400, it's usually I'm setting aside $15 for the roof, just in case there's some things I can't see from the photos, and I got $500 for the landscaping, just keep things clean until we get it ready to make sure we don't get any code violations. All right, I got $1,300 for my rent, and now my property taxes. Let's see what's get listed here. Obviously, you should check the assessor records. 64. If you haven't seen the latest podcast I did with Jeffrey and Jeff English, they always talked about using the tax assessor record, and they also considered and recommend, at least that's how they did it, using the crime score for like a 3/4 mile radius. So that's always something that you can look into. So 166.80 with $64 of property taxes. I got 10% for the maintenance, nothing for the HOA. I got 10% for property manager. I got 5% for vacancy. All right, let's go ahead and keep going. I got 25% down payment, which is made up of the asking price multiplied by the 25% down payment that we see here. And my finance portion is going to be equals to my asking price subtracting the down payment of the 25%. And I'm still underwriting using 8.25% as my interest rate right now for this deal. All right, cool. So now that I got all these numbers here, I got my PI, I got my TI. I even added 20% premium on the insurance number that was listed there because I assumed that the premium for a rental property is probably going to be a little bit higher. Hopefully it's lower, right? You can shop around and get some quotes. But for now, I'm going to assume that the $166 is pretty accurate. And I want to just underwrite it using that assumption, right? Because insurance premiums have been going up consistently every single year in auto markets. So we just want to be really careful about that. All right, let me just double check. Okay. All right, so now I want to go through a few scenarios with all of you. If we rent this property as a 4-bedroom and we rent it out for $1,300 in rent, which is what we got from the rent reasonable assessed, I will be losing negative $264 a month, and that would be a negative 6.2% return, assuming you bought this property for $179,000. Okay. Now, let's say like you include all utilities and you were to get the full rent at even $1,620. Like what would that get you? Like, let's say you made that mistake and you did it. Well, in that scenario, you would be breaking even on the deal, $1,620, which means that it's still not a deal, right? You didn't do all this work and go through all the stress just to break even every single one. You probably are investing here for cash flow, right? So I'm going to lower this number back to 1,300, right? Because that's the conservative rent assumption or the reasonable rent assumption that we're using for this property. So when I go back to $1,300 for my rent, now I'm trying to figure out, well, what price would I pay for this property if I did get, if my target, let's say 10% cash on cash return. So watch what happens to this cash and cash hold number as my asking price goes down. So if I go down to $130,000, that doesn't do anything. How about I go to $100,000? Wow. So, okay, now we're talking $90,000. There we go. So at $90,000, this would definitely be a deal because now I'd be cash flowing $237 a month, and my cash and cash return is 10.5%, right? So now you know, hey, if I ever see a turnkey property for $90,000 in this area, based on my expense assumptions, that's how I know in 35228 that's a good number, right? I can probably get $1,300 for a 4-bedroom. Now I start recording and remembering all these market details. Like I can start underwriting these deals even quicker, even faster, and I know exactly what I'm looking for, right? Now, that's going to be really interesting for you to figure out because let's say you go up to, let's say you went up to 1375, something like that, because it's such a nice home. What does that do to your purchase price, right? Watch what happens to you now that I increased the rent to 1375, so $75 extra a month. At 9,000, it'll be 13%. So if I'm trying to preserve my target of 10%, what am I willing to pay now? If I go to 100 grand, okay, that could still work. So hopefully you just saw what just happened, right? You went from 1,300 to 1,375 a month, and you're still cash flowing 237. But now your cash on cash return is 9.5%. But that extra $75 a month justified. Again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments. That justified you paying 100 grand instead of 90 grand. And that's the exercise I really want you guys all to go through. Because for every single property, there is a set of terms that makes this a deal. That's why we work through all these scenarios. That's how we know whether or not a deal is worth our time, whether or not the deal is worth us sending a handyman out there to walk the property, get photos for you, or even sending a contractor out there to give you a bid, right? Because you probably have to pay the contractor for their time, because if you keep having them walk and visit properties that you're not going to close on, eventually people stop listening to you, they stop taking your calls, they just don't pay attention anymore. So these are all the items that you really have to be aware of in order to figure out whether or not that's truly to your advantage. So I'm glad we're able to get through all those different items and talk through the total scenarios, because I think this is really important, right? Like, oh, let's do one more scenario. Like, let's say I can get my interest rate to 7.5%, right? Now what am I willing to pay? Can I get 110? No. 105. Yeah. So if my interest rate went from 8.25 to 7.5, now all of a sudden I'm willing to pay 105. So I was able to pay 105 grand, assuming everything else stayed constant, because I would still be making a 9.6% return on this money, assuming everything else stayed constant. And that's what I really wanted to hammer home, right? When they say about like, hey, what does interest rates do? This is how you take emotion out of the deal, right? If you know that, hey, all of a sudden you remember that the rent in this area, you can get 1375 maybe in a year from now, and you saw a property that's free turnkey, well, now all of a sudden you want to pay 105,000 instead of 100,000, because your interest rates that you're getting for these deals now are 7.5%. Okay. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. For those of you that do want a copy of the spreadsheet, hopefully this was helpful. What's most important is that we do this practice together. So if you go to affordablehousing.io and you want to copy the spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io, go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, plug in your information. I promise I won't spam you, and I'll just automate sending the tool with you. So my goal for you today is copy my homework. Look at the same deal I analyzed today using the same spreadsheet. And just remember, for 18 minutes a day, 365 days, that will get you into a league where you would probably be in the top 5%. And you would be so good at analyzing deals that it's probably just going to run off your tongue and you don't even have to think about it anymore. And I hope you find one thing that I do today that I didn't explain well enough and you explain it better, because this is how we lift each other up. This is how we grow together. This is how we make the community better. Thank you so much for caring about affordable housing. I know it's late at night, 11:30 here on the East Coast, but the whole point of this is stay consistent. And that's what I'm doing. I said I'm going to go live for 100 days in a row, and the habit formed. So I said, hey, let me just keep on going, because now I really understand why people say, show me your habits and I'll know how successful you are. The people that are able to preserve these habits, whatever they may be, as long as they contribute to your goals and whatever you are passionate about in life, you can absolutely do it. So I hope you all have an amazing night. I hope you guys spend some quality time with your family and friends this week. I will see you all tomorrow for day 255. Have an amazing day, everybody. I'll talk to you tomorrow.